Today, I'm joined by Sri Kaza. Sri is a seasoned business leader and small business advocate with a background in corporate strategy and entrepreneurship. He began his career at PricewaterhouseCoopers and Blue Martini Software before advising Fortune 500 companies at McKinsey. He later transitioned to executive roles, including a leadership position at Viking Cruises, before shifting his focus to small business support. Sri founded Talitica, a data analytics startup that helps small businesses assess job applicants. Most recently, as CEO of Forwardline Financial, he scaled a private equity-owned company and guided its sale to new investors. His book, Unconvention, draws on this extensive experience, challenging conventional corporate thinking and empowering small businesses to succeed by staying true to their unique strengths. And I'm excited to have him on the show so we can all learn from his deep business expertise. So Sri, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, John.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. And I know it's going to be a fun conversation because you and I have studied some things around resiliency in small businesses. So I'm kind of excited about that. But now you've worked like me, you've done, you've been on the corporate side, you've helped advise companies, you've worked on the small business side. So you've kind of been around all types of different businesses. What made you realize that small businesses shouldn't try to operate like big corporations?
It was right around the time of COVID where we had at Forwardline, we were a lender. We had many, many clients in the small business space, lots of restaurants, lots of retailers, everybody who was about to get affected by the lockdowns that came when COVID hit us in 2020. And as we tried to go help them and get them either financing or work with the government programs that were slowly coming out, I felt like everything was designed kind of one size fits all, and all was big companies, and the little guys were just getting left behind on a lot of different things. And so while we did our best, a lot more of the companies failed than should have. A lot of those companies struggled, and when we're picking up the pieces, and I was rebuilding our business because we struggled too during COVID. As we're rebuilding our business, I got to meet and learn from some of the small businesses that did survive, and it inspired me to start with actual analytical research. I had reams of data, 50,000 small businesses where we did these fantastic business cases and laid out what they were going to go do and how they're going to go grow. And tens of thousands of them where we got fantastic data post and during. And I was going to look for some patterns, saying, okay, well, look, I was a McKinsey partner. I built our methodology for understanding somebody's business case and what's the structure. We had recommendations on how should you think about pricing and how you should think about your marketing. And so my expectation was, all right, let's go compare what are the very specific things that they followed in the business cases that correlated to success and survival. And I was very frustrated because every scatter plot we put together was more like a Rorschach test. It was, like if this like great following good strategy and thinking about things the right way didn't work, what am I learning from these individual companies when I meet them or talk to them on the phone or read through their files? And what I learned was initially, I'll just be honest. I read of the survivors. I read stubborn, stuck in their ways, unwilling to compromise. But somehow they survived. And then I learned a little bit more as I heard their stories. And I think the problem for me when I was trying to do the data-oriented work was data doesn't capture the relationships, doesn't capture like the purpose that these businesses hold. It doesn't capture the impact they have on their communities. And it doesn't capture their uniqueness and like what they do and why it's so different. And what I found was actually folks who, instead of pursuing, let me go get something that the market wants and make it as efficiently as possible and price it as high as I can, which is kind of a corporate strategy. If you're trying to scale and grow your business, you kind of have to do those things. These folks were trying to fulfill something maybe different, or at least it felt different when you looked at like the raw data. When you talk to them, it made perfect sense. It was, well, my customers love this, so I want to keep doing it. Well, but my data says that if you did that, it would be less profitable. And they'd be like, yeah, that's okay. Or they would do things like, well, I'm doing this and I made this part of how I train my employees, and I encourage them to leave after after learning how to be a hairdresser and kind of getting their own, I encourage them to move on, and I bring in different ones. It's like, well, you know that means you're going to lose customers, you're going to have the scale issues, but I'm developing people.
Hmm.
This is the answer. And bit, right? But when you see this pattern over and over and over again, that people who cared about more than just, trying to make a buck, or who cared about having this impact on the rest of their business, it actually was consistent in who survived. Some examples, right, that make sense, the stories that would make sense. People would go in their favorite restaurant, right, that they would only dine in at. They were all ordering takeout, right? They're not ordering takeout from any of these chain dine-in restaurants that would also probably have gotten a big chunk of money from the government. They had to order takeout, right? Not because they needed to, they groceries, they were getting everything delivered anyway, but they did because they didn't want that business to be gone.
Hmm.
So you did it, I'm sure. I know I did it.
Yeah.
People did things like had virtual or Zoom sessions with their personal trainers. Well, they knew their personal trainer was going to struggle through this. They did it to support them. They didn't do it because they needed to go and watch their personal trainer, on Zoom. Very few people did anyway. And hair salons, people would actually pre-buy their next hair treatment, knowing that it was going to be indefinite time, but the business owner needed the cash. So all of these behaviors were only being done for companies where the customers and the community really needed them.
Hmm.
My opening case studies where I kind when did a number of things. There were did a number of interviews outside of the companies that I work directly with. I heard a GoFundMe campaign for almost every one of these businesses that had an impact on their community, and people were coming back to rather them. Walmart didn't get a GoFundMe.
Hmm.
Nobody went and pre-bought, haircuts at whatever Supercuts, right? They're not doing it. They're doing it for business they care about. So
Yeah.
it was very different. Now, the reason I wrote the book was because I had to still square that peg, right? These folks are doing something that's just unconventional. Why did it work? I still believe that the rules of business apply to everybody. I still believe that the strategic frameworks that I use every day and learned a lot about in my corporate world, they still apply.
Hmm.
So what I was able to do though is kind of reframe their decisions around the things that make companies survive. And their decisions were still about things that are important to any business. But in these cases, they were personal, right? And they may or may not have been able to articulate them themselves, but they had unique businesses, right? They had very explicit positioning, like we do it this way. And maybe they had a limited set of customers, right? But being unique, you can have a limited set of customers and still survive, right? You're not the scale that's all thing for all people. I call that positioning. Uh, then, of course, they've got this closeness to their customers that big companies are desperate to have, and spend hundreds of millions of dollars to try to create. But the small business owners, they have it intuitively. And the best part is most of the kind of CEOs of these small businesses deal with customers directly. They
Hmm.
know their customers, right? Imagine Jamie Dimon making decisions on how people's bank fees impact them, right? First of all, he doesn't even make that decision. That's delegated down 50 levels. But not just that, he doesn't know any regular people, right? He doesn't know he isn't talking to all these folks. He's off. Where is he today? I think he's in China talking to President Xi. Like they don't have the perspective of the customer, but small businesses do. So I call that proximity. And the last one is purpose. It's pretty simple, but I don't want to lock somebody in and say, hey, look, my purpose is to change the world, is to create a whole new generation of leaders. It doesn't have to be so world impacting. A number of small businesses I talked to who survived had simpler ones. My purpose was to, be independent, not have to work for greedy corporate people, or not have to compete against this type of competitor. Just want to take care of my family. These are all purposes. But in these cases, that purpose held the business together in the toughest of times. Still got to take care of my family, right? That's a very, very important purpose. So, if that's critical to this business and that's why the founder founded it, he'll fight through what he has to fight through in an unprofitable year or a bad year to make it through. Those three pieces together, though, form a very strong stool for resiliency. I could give you the data behind things like, oh yeah, you need to
Hmm.
have some cash on hand, you need to have this, you need to have that. Some of them are a bit obvious, but also some of them they don't hold if you don't have those other pieces.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, for what you're telling me, it's funny because you look at the data and you're trying to find some sort of patterns. It kind of reminds me of the book Good to Great, where you see, companies are doing really well and they went to try to research, what was the reason behind it. And he found all these really interesting things about these companies that went from good to great. And I think to your point, you see the data and you go to analyze it and you sort of saw some unconventional things in these
Yep.
small businesses. And one of the things you touched on, and I found in my research as well, is what you talked about is community. And what I found is that the startups that had built their community and built trusting relationships with their employees, with their customers, with their community, even with their vendors, they were more likely to withstand shocks because everybody sort of rallied around each other.
Yep.
I was interviewing employees at a co-working space, and so when COVID hit, everybody went home, right? But they loved the community of that co-working space so much so nobody canceled their subscriptions. They told me, they said
Yeah.
everyone maintained their subscription, their monthly, they were paying their monthly fees and they were all working from home, but they didn't
Yeah.
want the co-working space to die.
Yeah.
So it's sort of consistent with your observation as well, which is the community, they were providing a very essential service, but they had also invested in community so much so that the people didn't want their customers didn't want them to go out of business during that
Yeah.
time.
In
So
fact, I would tell you that that's what the essential part of the service was. It
yeah,
was the community.
yeah.
And you may not get it if you're just running your business day to day, but taking a step back and asking, hey, what is it that I'm trying to do? What is it that people love about me or love about, coming to my establishment? You'll start to see it. And I can't put my finger on it from far away. It was really tough, right, with data. But you hear the stories, you listen to the people, you have this proximity to your people, you'll hear it. And then that gives you a couple of directions as an owner, right? You can say, look, I want to double down, right? I'm gonna serve the people who like me a lot, the most. You could say, look, I need to go find more people like that so that I can grow, right? Or I can when my next one I'm going to build is going to, build on that or something like this. But I will tell you, if you're just pursuing growth without the identity,
Mm.
uh, you can get there, but you don't have that resiliency. You do have to go a little bit more bland. You do have to give up some things to get bigger if you don't really hold on to your identity. And this is what I originally I said I called stubborn and stuck. Now I call committed,
Mm.
right? Because they really did say this is what matters. It's not I need to get more of these hamburgers to like 100 more people. You see this all the time with somebody with a really nice restaurant or a nice, idea of a restaurant trying to go and become the next, I don't know, Raising Cane's where they just go all over the country or whatever. Um, Maybe it works because it's a kind of a fast food thing that's hard to copy. But mostly what people want in one community isn't going to be the same as what people want in other communities. And if you have to go change yourself to satisfy 5, 10, 15 different communities, does your community need you anymore?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you're right. I mean, I'm teaching a marketing course right now, and we one of the things we were talking about was Dunkin' Donuts as far as a strategy. They were the blue collar, donuts, fresh donuts, and cheap coffee, and it was the blue
Yep.
collar. And they've now, they've abandoned their fresh donuts. They build them in a factory and they ship them over, and now they have all these different fancy drinks and all this, and the costs are up, and they're no longer the blue collar
Yeah.
company they start out with, but they
Yeah.
pursued growth versus like maybe to your point, staying true to their best fit customers, when they started, which were the blue collar, get my cup of coffee, head off to my blue collar job.
Yeah,
So
that's right. They
yeah.
used to have a lot more love.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they traded that away.
Yeah.
Maybe they are making more profits. Look, it's probably owned by private equity, and the direction is now more profit-oriented direction. Look,
Right.
this is the way of these big companies. Sometimes you can hold on to your purpose for a long period of time, and there's some companies who've done it really well. So I don't want
Mhm.
to say that big companies can't, but I'll tell you, it's so much easier in a boardroom or in an executive meeting room to talk about growth or profitability or something with a number on it
Yeah.
than how much our customers love us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody talks about. Who used to talk about this was like Jeff Bezos had this kind of customer obsession, years ago, and it helped
Yeah.
him until he was so big he didn't need it anymore. And he's not
Mm.
there, but they're out there doing, I think I don't know if you heard about the price fixing. They're not doing price fixing now
Yeah. Yeah. Or,
because they don't love their customers anymore,
well,
because they don't need to.
I've got ads on my Amazon, Prime TV.
Yeah. It's
Like
like,
I'm paying a monthly fee now I'm getting ads. So like what
yeah,
are we doing that for? That's not customer first. That's
nope.
that's chasing cash, isn't it?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. So one of the things you talk about in your book, I want to touch on this real quick, was this idea of an underdog mindset. And you say that that's actually essential, right, to be able to do business in an uncertain economy. And we're facing a lot of uncertainty, whether it's AI, whether it's wars, whether it's, like you said, pandemics we talked about earlier. Um, Underdog mindset. Talk about that and why that's such a valuable commodity for small business.
So, part of it is the risk taking, right? So as an underdog, you got to realize you're small, right? Now, this doesn't mean that you don't take risk, but what you do is you recognize that, you can take risks that won't cost you when you're very small, whereas bigger guys can't do that, right? One interesting example. Well, let me finish the underdog thesis, and then I'll get back to an interesting example. But the idea of either reacting quickly because you can follow your gut, or empowering the people around you because you know that you can trust them. These are things that the underdog can do, which may, in a bigger organization, feel risky to say, oh, well, I'll just let my cashier decide who gets a rebate or not, right? They would never do that. There's going to be a
Yeah.
policy, there's
Yeah.
going to be these things. But as an underdog, you have to be scrappy. You should know that you can't go spend the kind of money to go do a customer survey, or the same kind of money to go and, pay for click advertising when you don't have a great website. There's all these other challenges. Um, and so that underdog mindset of being scrappy, knowing who you are, knowing your size, right? Um, really makes a difference in those day-to-day decisions. And what I would encourage a lot of small business owners to do, actually any business leader in general, who's short of capacity to do the analysis and the detailed work that's required by these big corporations, right? You just can't because you're small. What I advise to all of them is make sure that your principles behind your decisions are sound, and really invest in understanding those principles. So I mentioned earlier in our conversation, the underdog principles were positioning, proximity, and purpose. So if you have a really, really good sense of your position, right, and you invest in the sense of positioning, right, you then don't have to go and analyze, hey, which customer is going to be more profitable than that other customer, and who should get this discount, who shouldn't, right? You'll know there in which customers love the thing that I offer, and
Yeah.
the customers who, they come in because we're here, right? And it's okay to have customers who just come in because you're here, but your decisions should pivot around then what's special about you, what your customers love. And the same thing goes with positioning. You know your customers better than everybody. You don't need to wait to make the call. So the example I was going to give is this. Again, part of my analysis that just taught me I need to go learn the stories. Uh, Post COVID, I have a ton more data now, that was centralized around who made what policies, like which governments made what policies, when they made them, right? And how long they lasted, down to like the little geographies. And so, out in California, I heard from so many upset small businesses who felt like the government, shut them down, right? Hair salons were like, "Oh, we're kind of done. We did this spacing thing is killing us. We don't have any space to begin with, and blah blah blah." And so my assumption was, yeah, the states that had the toughest, hardest lockdowns, right? And California, I think, was definitely one of them. I was expecting their businesses to have failed at a higher rate.
Oh, yeah, that
And
makes sense. Yeah.
instead, what I found was kind of a consistent struggle in the 25 to 30%, but actually a lot more in the state of Florida and and some regions in Texas, not all. Um, and I was shocked about Florida, right? Like, what's going on? Like
Yeah.
they didn't really
Yeah.
have any, they didn't have any major kind of constraints, and they let they didn't have a mask policy, they didn't have a number of things. And I talked to a nail salon, the nail salon, yeah, and they were in a mall, and there's another nail salon in that same mall, and they decided they're going to have their own policy anyway, right? It wasn't required, but they're like, you know what? I know my customers, most of them are nervous. They're older, they're concerned. So we had a policy, right? We said, look, 50% of our chairs are going to be empty. Everyone's going to be wearing masks. And the reason we're doing this is because we think it'll make our customers feel more comfortable. So they did that. And all of their available chairs, so the 50%, were full the whole time. In
Mm.
fact, they had a backlog. Why? Because they had to say no to customers who wanted to come. In that same mall, what she told me was there was another place that didn't have masks and embraced not having masks. And they had chairs available, but they weren't full all the time. In fact, they weren't full even half of the time. And they really struggled. And the issue was, the customers wanted to be in a place they felt safe.
Mm.
There were customers who didn't want to be bothered with masks and et cetera, but they weren't going to the place that had a ton of chairs because there's a no need if you can get to the one that's taken care of. So my take on it was okay. So these businesses in California versus in Florida, they didn't get to make their choice. They were forced. But when you're forced, everyone's going to run the business to the best of their ability, right?
Yeah.
You know the demand that's coming in, so you know the staff that you're going to have. You just manage whatever you have to manage. In Florida, what you saw were people taking different strategies,
Yeah.
and some succeeding and some not.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the businesses that succeeded by making their own decision and not waiting for somebody else, not waiting for the mall, not waiting for the government, not whatever, because they knew their customers, like they did okay, right?
Yeah.
They survived because they knew their customer.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that and I think being small, I think to your point on proximity, you understand your customers better, right? So if the larger you are, the more further removed you are from that day to day,
Yeah,
and so you're not being able to make those decisions for your customers, and it makes so much sense. And I think, like you said, the people that said, out of abundance of caution, we're going to do these things, and people felt safer, at least until, because there was a lot of uncertainty, unknowns. And I know, that's what I talked to a lot of the entrepreneurs I talked to. Similarly, they said, we're going to do, our goal is to keep everybody safe, like our employees, our customers. That's number one.
yep,
Then we'll see what we can do to, and most of them said, and this, my second thing is to try to keep everybody employed as much as they can. And the
yep,
third thing is, like, how do we stay in business, and so
yeah,
how do we
yeah,
survive? So, but obviously safety of employees and customers was like paramount for those companies that I talked to. At least they recognize that I got to keep my people safe. Like those
100%.
relationships were important,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't want to complain about my home state.
Mm.
They did what they could do, but like taking that decision out of the business owner's hands is tough, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because every community is different.
Yeah.
Every city, every business establishment, they're different, and so I would much prefer to empower the business owner to go and make these decisions for themselves. But you see in Florida, like they made decisions that didn't work out, right? Because they didn't read their customers as well.
Yeah, yeah. What's interesting, you talked about this, very important. I mean, positioning is really critical. And I think as a small business, if you don't understand who loves your product, like, you're missing out. I mean, I think as entrepreneurs, we have to figure out, like, for me, I sell product to electric utilities, and what I found is when we started the company, we thought we'll sell to all electric utilities. But what we
Mm.
found is the small electric utilities, the ones that are in a city or a rural co-op, they liked us better because we provide technical support. We answer their questions. We always pick up the phone. We don't treat them
Yep.
as a number. And so they liked us. And then when we try to sell to the larger utilities, they just want the lowest price. They don't care about all the extra things that we do. And
That's
so we
right.
found that our ideal customers were the small utilities, the we call them munis and co-ops. Those were our ideal customers. And we learned that, that's we spent all our time and attention taking care of those kind of customers. We don't go after the whales, because we know the
Yeah, if you go
whales.
after the whales,
Yeah,
you waste a bunch of time and energy. You end up
yeah,
with empty calories and
exactly.
you're hungry, the next day for something else. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's brilliant. That's a very important observation. And it's so hard though for entrepreneurs and business owners to decide that there's customers they don't want. But
yes,
the way I wrote this book as I laid it out, I think that's the first and most important decision you have to make
yeah,
before ever even one customer walks in the doors. Who is the kind of customer I'm willing to lose?
yeah,
Because you can't serve everybody, especially, at a subscale or small business. But if you know who you really, really want, that implies you shouldn't chase with your limited resources the ones that you don't. So that's great. Like it's tough, especially for for your sales guys who probably see the whale and they can see the commission or whatever
yeah, yeah,
compensation that's kind of floating around on that whale. But it's dangerous. And if you've done a good job as a leader and said, look, our culture is we're going to take care of the companies that need that support. We're a
yeah,
support and services company. These guys don't care about our support and services.
yeah,
So let's not stress over them. If they want a bid, we'll give them a bid, right? But don't
yeah.
run up and down the hill.
Yeah, no, exactly. We're not going to go chasing it because it's a waste of time and energy. And again, they don't see our value proposition the way other customers do. So find that
Yeah.
best fit customer and take care of them. And so I think that to me is a small business and gives you an advantage. But
Oh yeah.
a lot of entrepreneurs, like me included, you start your business, you think everyone's going to love my product, but you're going to find that some really truly love it, and those are the ones you want to make sure that you take care of through thick and thin, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, we probably have some entrepreneurs who are listening in to this, and they're probably thinking to themselves, okay, this is all great. How can I start building a more resilient business? What do I need to do? What are some steps I can take as an entrepreneur to become to learn some of these things? You talked about the three P's: the positioning, proximity, purpose. How do you get started?
Yeah, so I have a simple downloadable tool on my website, free. I'll mention that later, the details. But what I encourage folks to do is think about the three different P's about their business. And so there's some tools on how to think about those questions, but start with the positioning. Who am I? What's unique about me? Why do people love me? And when I get into the uniqueness, sometimes people are worried, oh my God, but I run a pizza place or I have a whatever, like it's not unique. There's 50 of them. It's like, no, yours is actually special
Yeah,
because there's no other pizza place that makes the pizza the way you do in
yeah,
your neighborhood. And get your definition right on what is that? Like, who am I really serving? And part of this question is who do I serve and who am I willing to lose? Doesn't mean you're going to lose them or you're gonna chase them out the door, but it means I'm going to have a very important set of principles. And if it kind of pushes a few people away while it actually embraces the rest of the people I want to serve, this is okay. Uh, you get that right. The remaining decisions and the remaining strategies that you decide you either choose or build out, they'll follow that positioning. Um, but the next one, of course, is this proximity. You need to know your customer. Now, one of the things that is really difficult for a small business owner or any business leader to think about is the journey that either their partner or their customer or their reseller that they go through entirely, right? Because they know them in the one or two contexts of, okay, you're in front of me or I'm in front of you. We know this context well. But proximity, because you're in the neighborhood, because it's part of your community, because you have more than one touch point, you have to embrace those. And um, if you're a student of business, you may have heard of something called the customer journey. There's a couple of other decision frameworks for understanding how a customer or a person has a need, discovers they have a need, and realizes, oh, there's actually services or products out there that could meet my need. And then from there, they figure out, okay, well, there are vendors like, John's manufacturing company or, Sri's manufacturing company that may be able to service them. And then finally, which one do I want to use? And then finally, what do I want to pay for it? Like, it's a very long journey. And usually you're only thinking about this. They already know the problem. They already know that I'm a vendor. I just need to tell them why I'm better than the other guy. That's a very, very common mindset. But if you're unique and if you have something special, I love the manufacturing example you've given, is actually I'm very unique. In fact, if I allow myself to get RFPs from new cities and in these co-ops, it's possible they've been influenced by the wrong set of people in writing the RFP because they fail to ask questions that actually would matter to them.
Mm.
So I've got to get ahead of this somehow and reach these people who I know don't have the internal services and support and talk to them about what I can do or talk to them about these being important questions and ask these questions of their suppliers. And if they can ask these questions of their potential suppliers, then I'll get screened in earlier
Mm.
and others will get screened out.
Yep.
But this is if you're going to start to go and adapt your principles, right? Your proximity means I know these guys. I need to go talk to the ones I have. I need to go say, how did you discover me? All that stuff. You got to learn it. You got to learn their journey. So know how unique you are. Go learn your customer's journey. And then the last one, and also the first one, is articulate and embrace your purpose. So I said earlier, your purpose could just be, hey, I didn't want to have a boss, and I didn't want to,
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to go and take care of my family. I don't want to judge a purpose, but I do want you to say, look, the people who invest in you, who also believe in your purpose, right, um, will be more supportive if they know what it is. And
Yeah.
so that could be, yeah, hey, we love him. He's part of the community, and he needs this business to keep his family fed. Like they'll still support you, right? They'll still come and
Yeah.
rally around
Yeah.
if you're in a city and you have no friends and you're here to go make a buck for yourself, there's not going to be very many people who are going to come in and support you. So
Yeah.
your purpose has to be something that you can share, and your employees should buy into it. Your customers don't necessarily have to buy into it, but they have to feel the impact of it. So if you're thinking about a purpose that you can just make up and say this is my purpose and talk about it, it won't work, right? It's something you have to believe in.
Yeah.
And so my advice doesn't land with folks who are just trying to make money or try and grow a business for the sake of getting a home run. It doesn't land. And it's okay if it doesn't land for me. Because that's not my purpose, right? But my purpose is I want to encourage folks to have something unique, something differentiated, right? And give the rest of the community, the market itself, marketplace, diverse options.
Mm.
Can you imagine if we didn't have that? We'd have
Yeah. Monopoly.
just
Yeah.
McDonald's and Burger King for lunch everywhere, right? Because
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no need for variety.
Yeah.
Instead, though, you plan out these pieces, and then in the downloadable on my site, I talk about the other important pieces you have to solve, which include, well, if I'm going to be unique, how do I think about the pricing of my offering? How do I think about my communications and my marketing? How do I actually find my customers? There's elements around loyalty, building real loyalty, not this point system loyalty. That's not the corporate world calls that loyalty, but that's just points. Right? That's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
bribery. Loyalty, and then managing their own time around around their business, right? Around their purpose again, finding the things that actually their customers love, that they love. That could be a much smaller subset of the things you do every day, but putting yourself into the things that your customers love and that you love to do, and finding potentially other people or other ways to solve the other things is a really big lever for business owners or just leaders in general, embracing who you are instead of trying to do everything.
Yeah. 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 No, for our company, we started out from day one. We said we're a different kind of supplier. That's our purpose. And
Yeah,
so we have a lot of large suppliers in our industry. We're a small supplier.
yeah,
And we
yeah,
when they put up some policy that's anti-customer, we do just the opposite. We do a pro customer. So, they have a short warranty, we have a long warranty. We have, we put our inventory online so people can find what's available and how quickly we can ship it. So we have short lead times. We have a simple buying process, not complicated. So whatever the big guys do, we do the opposite. So that's kind of just been our message from day one, and it's been effective for us. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no,
our purpose, to be different. Yeah.
yeah, and your team embraces it, right?
Yeah.
Which is a challenge for some leaders, right? And we
Yeah.
and I know that a number of listeners you have really are learning about leadership through this podcast. And to me, leadership isn't just kind of talking to or explaining to your team, it's role modeling.
Yeah.
So if you can embrace that purpose, you're role modeling and you're living in that purpose and kind of demonstratively kind of pursuing that purpose. The team around you sees that and learns it and behaves in the same way. It's actually a lot easier to role model it than it is to write a policy that explains it to people. Now, I'm not saying don't write policies. I'm saying, yeah, I know you don't have time to write
Yeah. Yeah.
policies. So role model it instead.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point. Yeah, especially as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner, yeah, what you do is the culture. Your actions reflect your values, right? So you don't have to write it down. That people are seeing your values by everything you're doing every day. So
Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
great point. I love that. So, Sri, this has been excellent. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners?
Oh, so I'd love to share that, learning to embrace the things that are unique about yourself, about your business. It applies in your personal life and it applies in your business career, even in the corporate ladder. And I would take the time, right? This is my advice to everybody. Take the time. If it's not your customers, maybe it's your team, it's your employees, it's your bosses. Go learn what they love about you.
Yeah,
um, you know, all the stuff that as a kind of a go-getter, I always hear the negative because I know I got to fix this and I got to go do this differently, etc. And I used to just, dwell more on the what do I got to fix as opposed to like, hey, what do they really appreciate? And then when you realize that actually in a leadership role, if I do the stuff that people appreciate and I spend more of my time and energy there, and I have teammates who can help me cover the things that I don't do as well or people don't appreciate out of me, you can be such more effective and actually have much more positive impact on the people around you if you embrace the things that they really like. So the whole positioning piece that we talked about before, like that still works for pretty much anything. If you can really be open-minded to what your team.
love that. Lean into your strengths. I think that's a big part, both in your business and also in your personal life. I think that's very very good advice. I love that. Sri, how can our people find out more about you, the work you do, and this new book called Unconvention?
So you can learn about me in my book at my website. It's at sri-kaza.com, SRI-KAZA.com. And yeah, if you want to listen to the book or read the book, you listen to it on Spotify. You can, buy it on Amazon. It's in some stores as well. But I'd encourage people to maybe just download the primer on the principles. Learn
Yep.
about the primer at least. The book's got a bunch of fun stories, which I love. And I told you when I did my research, I had a bunch of data. We threw out all the charts because apparently people don't like looking at charts when they read books. They
Yeah.
just want to
Yeah.
read the book. So it was kind of new territory for me as a former McKinsey analyst who wanted to write a book. But you can check me out there. And then the work I do today, I still do a lot of consulting work and work with businesses that are trying to transform and grow. I don't spend that much time with small businesses in my current role, but I do mentor and I do volunteer at organizations that coach entrepreneurs.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to put links to all of Shree's resources here in the show notes here. So I highly encourage you to reach out to him if you got a question about what we talked about today, or maybe you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking to myself, well, how do I become more resilient? How do I become more how do I last over all the changes that are going to be coming your way, whether it's AI, whether it's global unrest, wars, tariffs, you name it. This is a good book to read. This is a good book to read and understand how other people have done it. If you want to be successful, look for other people who have been successful, and they'll help give you some hints or some clues on how to be successful. This is a well-researched book. It's called Unconvention. I highly encourage you. The link is below. Get that book, read it. You want to be a better entrepreneur? This is a great way to do it. Learn from the best, learn from others who have gone before you. I always encourage you to do that on this show. So we've got the links below. I highly encourage you to check it out. Sri, thanks for coming on board, and thanks for sharing all of your just, you've had a lifetime of wisdom, and you've kind of put it out for us, and I really appreciate that. Thanks for coming on the show and sharing your expertise.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.